reacting to my latest 2025 NFL Mock Draft. Keith's going to grill me on some of my landing spots for quarterbacks, for receivers, you name it, we got it all. Coming up next on today's episode.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. I am an offensive draft analyst over with Bleacher Report, and that's my guy, Keith Sanchez. He is the director of scouting with the Draft Network and 2019 national champion with those LSU Tigers. Guys, thank you for tapping in with us each and every day, being our everydayers. Guys, we're doing a mock draft review. I did a new mock draft for the 2025 NFL draft cycle. We're going to go through basically all 32 picks. We talked about it yesterday. I'm not doing what the Titans GM wants to do. I'm not trading out. I'm not going Abdul Carter. I picked Cam Ward, my QB1. Get a quarterback in there, build around them, and reset your franchise. Number 2, the Cleveland Browns select Abdul Carter. I almost went Shedeur Sanders here, but with that Myles Garrett situation, I feel as if this is a team that might be just completely kind of turning the corner, just rebuilding all around. Right, if you lose Myles Garrett through a trade, you lose basically your best player. So it's like, I don't know if bringing in a rookie quarterback is going to change much when your defense takes a substantial hit like that. Bringing in Abdul Carter will help kind of lessen the blow a little bit. 3rd overall, the New York Giants get Shedeur Sanders, quarterback out of Colorado. Number 4, the New England Patriots select Travis Hunter, cornerback / wide receiver from Colorado. At number 5, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Mason Graham, defensive line from Michigan. At number 6, the Las Vegas Raiders select Will Johnson, cornerback out of Michigan. At number 7, I have Tatora McMillan, wide receiver out of Arizona, going to the New York Jets. At number 8, I have Mike Green, edge rusher from Marshall, going to the Carolina Panthers. At number 9, I have Tennessee edge rusher James Pierce Jr. going to the New Orleans Saints. And at number 10, I have Tyler Booker, guard out of Alabama, going to help protect Caleb Williams. Keith, what stands out to you in this top 10?
Yeah, first of all, I agree. The discourse around the Titans trading away the number 1 pick, right? Like we talked about that was yesterday's podcast. Just take a quarterback and try to figure it out, right? Because I've seen even some big time people say that they should continue to invest in Will Levis. Listen, I think that maybe you potentially use that as trade capital, right? Like maybe you could get a 5th or 6th round pick or something like that for Will Levis. Looking at the rest of it, DP, I like what I thought was interesting was the Tatora McMillan to the New York Jets. Talk about that for me, why you thought that that's a good fit given the quarterback uncertainty.
I think because of the quarterback uncertainty, you're not going to be able to get the quarterback at 7. I mean, no, let me correct that. You could get your quarterback at 7. I wouldn't advise taking your quarterback at 7 in this particular draft. I would advise going with a better a player that's going to come in and make an impact right away. And I think we always talk about building the team for the quarterback. Yeah. I think with trading, they're going to trade away Devontae Adams. I think the report came out right before the Super Bowl. It's a LA team. He wants to stay close to home in LA, whether it's San Fran, the Rams. Yeah, I think those are his main 2 teams. Like, you're not going back to Vegas. So, like, they're expecting him to be probably the replacement to Cooper Kupp for Matthew Stafford and the Rams.
I was going to say, maybe the Chargers. Is there any shot him going to the Chargers?
Potential. That's the other LA team. I was thinking about the Raiders, but no, the Chargers. Good. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. So, like, he's going to be traded because of the whole Aaron Rodgers not going to be there. He was only brought in for Aaron Rodgers. I think that getting rid of Aaron Rodgers and trading away Devontae Adams, you get Garrett Wilson happy again. Because one thing about Garrett Wilson is that he knew he was the wide receiver 1 for that team, and Aaron Rodgers felt like, I want my guy here. So, like, getting Garrett Wilson happy, you got to get the quarterback situation figured out, but then pairing him with a Tatora McMillan, you have a 1-2 punch at wide receiver that whoever steps in under center, they feel much better stepping in under center. Where if you're Garrett Wilson, you're like, yeah, you can't double me. Like you could try it and you can do it, but then Tatora McMillan gets a 1-on-1 opportunity, and it's a lot better. I feel a lot better of a quarterback throwing to Tatora McMillan and Garrett Wilson than Alan Lazard and Garrett Wilson. So it's like I think that is one of those situations, one of those wide receiver spots, sneaky wide receiver spots, is the New York Jets. They could go potential edge rusher with Jermaine Johnson and his contract situation. We'll see how everything plays out this offseason, but I decided to give them the big body pass catcher that I think will pair very well with the skill set of Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, I think that's just an interesting slot overall, right? Like, and I probably, if it happens, something that people won't be expecting at all. Do we think at pick number 2, I'm kind of going backwards here with the Cleveland Browns, are they just totally out on the quarterback? What do you think their approach should be like, or you think they're a year away from being a year away from having to draft a quarterback, or should drafting a quarterback to be able to support him?
I mean, of course, you want him to draft one, especially with the whole Deshaun Watson situation. I think they can get out of that contract at the end of 2025 and everything, so they can be able to move on. It's just a fact of, all right, you bring in a rookie quarterback, especially because Myles Garrett says, I want to win. And you're probably not winning right in 2025, to be honest. And if he feels that way, he really wants to be traded, you're going to be able to get some draft capital for him. Potentially, so maybe a first round for next year or early second for next year. I mean, he's one of the best defensive players in the league in his prime. Like, you're going to get some premium draft capital for him, right? Especially from potentially from a contending team. They say, you know what? Maybe he's the missing piece for us, right?
Yeah.
I think Lions fans are like, yeah, trade whatever. Like, as long as it's not like, some of our prime assets, trade that first round pick. I don't care. And I think if that's the situation, if Myles Garrett leaves, you can't expect a quarterback to come in and your defense takes a substantial hit. You don't have a go-to pass rusher. That dude's gravitational pull is unreal. Like, where you see 2 or 3 blockers, a tight end, a tackle, and the guard, now they're going to be able to play your defensive line honest. And I don't know if that D-line is set up to be played honest without a Myles Garrett. So it's like, well, in this particular situation, I decided to pass on quarterback, get Abdul Carter, get a guy that can soften that blow off the edge, because losing Myles Garrett, who's your next true edge rusher? I don't know if they really have one. So go ahead and get arguably the best defensive player for a lot of people in this draft, and go ahead and get that edge rusher to build that defense around. Because I think if Myles Garrett gets traded, I think it's going to be a domino effect. Because then you look at Denzel Ward. What happens with Denzel Ward? Right? Like, not, you know what I mean? Like, then you start looking at your secondary and like, maybe those guys start asking out, because it's like, well, we clearly not going in the right direction if we trade Myles Garrett.
DP, everybody asking out, baby. Everybody will be asking out of Cleveland.
It's gonna be like the NBA trade deadline. Everybody's gonna want out.
But I also look at this, DP, that if they trade Myles Garrett and they're able to acquire more draft capital, is that firepower for them to move to number 1 and get the guy that they really want, right? Especially if Tennessee, if their conversations are serious talks. I don't know if that's just speculation or if that's real talk within the Titans building about moving back. How about if you're the Titans, you move back to 2 and still able to draft Abdul Carter, maybe pick up 1 extra first round pick, because you're not falling far, right? You're just allowing the Cleveland Browns to go get the guy that they want. So that could be very interesting, DP, I think, if you look at it from that perspective. But let's keep this thing going and flowing, DP. That was picks 1 through 10. Let's go picks 11 through 20, because I have a couple questions about some of these selections. We're going to talk about that coming up next.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my Pistons for a late game rally in the fourth quarter or picking Cade Cunningham to hit a clutch 3 to give us the win, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and that's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 back in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Picks 11 through 20 in my latest 2025 NFL mock draft. At number 11, the San Francisco 49ers select offensive lineman Will Campbell from LSU. At number 12, the Dallas Cowboys select Texas wide receiver Matthew Golden. At number 13, the Miami Dolphins select Gray Zabel, offensive lineman from North Dakota State. At number 14, the Indianapolis Colts select Tyler Warren, tight end from Penn State. At number 15, the Atlanta Falcons select Jalen Walker, linebacker, edge from Georgia. At number 16, the Arizona Cardinals select Walter Nolan, defensive lineman from Ole Miss. At number 17, the Cincinnati Bengals select Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver from Ohio State. At number 18, the Seattle Seahawks select offensive lineman Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas. At number 19, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Shamar Stewart, edge rusher from Texas A&M. And at pick 20, the Denver Broncos select Colston Loveland, tight end out of Michigan. Keith, where we want to start here?
Yeah, so I'll say a pick that I like right off of the jump. I love Will Campbell to the San Francisco 49ers. I think that is an ideal fit for him. The Dallas Cowboys going Matthew Golden at pick 12. I think that's an interesting situation. And I think I believe you spoke about it before, right? But potentially slating him there. Why the fit there with Matthew Golden that high at pick 12?
Man, wide receiver is a big need for this team. Like, it's a major need for this team. Jalen Tolbert hasn't worked out. Brandon Cooks is aging. It's been CeeDee Lamb and CeeDee Lamb only. You know what I mean? And I think for me, I'm in the business of helping Dak Prescott, a quarterback who I like more than the consensus. And I'm like, putting a Matthew Golden, legit athleticism, route running, great hands, ball skills, tracking, a true Z outside wide receiver. If you want to motion him down into the slot and give him a two-way go, even better. But I just think pairing him with CeeDee Lamb, this is a guy that is top, I think he's top 3 on both our wide receiver rankings right now. And I think he's a potential game changer for that offense because of the fact, again, talking about gravitational pull, CeeDee Lamb is going to command 2 DBs, a corner and a safety. So you're talking about being able to get cover one, single high, because somebody's going to try to trap coverage on CeeDee Lamb whether he's in the slot or at X. Now you get that explosive playmaker. And one of the most underrated parts of Matthew Golden's game is run after catch. He becomes a runner immediately after he secures the ball, and that dynamic ability and explosiveness and burst and acceleration is easy to see on film. I think he's a 3-level threat for this offense, and a guy that can absolutely open it up, especially for a team that I would assume with Brian Schottenheimer, I think is the new head coach. I'm assuming he's going to want to get the run game going a little more next year with Dak Prescott coming back and being healthy. Yeah, let's get that bombs away going and be able to keep those safeties back so we can run that ball with hopefully somebody they select on day 2 of the draft because they desperately need a running back.
Yep, no, 100%. That's another positional need. Strong positional need is running back, right? And you just want to know how the Cowboys are going to navigate their rumors that they may trade Michael Parsons. They need to do something because I think it's already like close to 50% of their salary cap is tied into Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. Then you add in Michael Parsons. That got to get you to like 65%, right? So 65% of your salary cap is going to be with 3 players, which is insane. Just to even think about. But let's keep going. Gray Zabel might be the highest I've seen his name thus far, right? Going to the Miami Dolphins, obviously a position of need. The Indianapolis Colts going with Tyler Warren. I know you're a Colston Loveland guy, but why did you draft Tyler Warren ahead of Colston Loveland?
So with the Colts, talking to some of my guys over there, one thing that the coaching staff, the GM, one thing they really prioritize is size. So it's like him being 6'6". He's listed at 260. I think when you talk about, I don't think he's 260. He might be 250. But I think with him is that you feel like, okay, I can put a little bit more weight on him if I need to, but I think they're going to be more comfortable with his body type rather than Colston Loveland's body type, who's probably 240, and you're going to have to bulk him up a little bit because that's what I was told at the Senior Bowl. If they were to draft potentially a Colston Loveland or a Harold Fannin, that's a situation where they might have to bulk those guys up. More so Harold Fannin, especially being 6'3", like 230, try to get him up to 240, 242, somewhere in there. But even with Loveland, like the run game, the functional strength in the run game for him, like you got to improve that. And this is a team that wants to run the ball with Jonathan Taylor, Anthony Richardson, things of that nature. I think like I said, I've always said this: the pass catching ability for Loveland is a tier higher than what Tyler Warren is going to give you. But I do think that one thing about them, they are a RAS. I think Tyler Warren's going to be a RAS darling when you get the height, the weight, the arm length, and all that type of stuff measured into that number. That's going to be one of those guys that I expect Chris Ballard, who's been heavily tied to the RAS, to make that type of decision and that type of pick.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep going through this, DP. The Cincinnati Bengals drafting Emeka Egbuka. I like that situation. Just in case they have to move off of T. Higgins, right? And a couple different things. It allows the rest of those guys like the Andre Ishuvas, a couple of Jermaine Burton, right? Kind of to stay in that wide receiver 3 to 4 role and not have to be bumped up to wide receiver 2. Kelvin Banks, this combination of players I want to talk about. Kelvin Banks and Shamar Stewart, DP, because these are two guys, consensus first round players. But I'll say this: they are, I think, both of those guys as high in athleticism, and they have the upside for being athletes. I thought that there was some technical concerns with both guys when I watched on film. That's just my personal opinion. I may be on this hill completely by myself, but watching Kelvin Banks, I thought that once you were probably about a second and a half into the pass rush sequence, I thought there were times where things just fell apart for him, right? As far as him staying technically sound. And then with Shamar Stewart, I understand being 6'5", 280, movement skills, seen him at the Senior Bowl, looks the part, XYZ. But this is definitely a guy that you better have faith in your defensive line coach and edge rush coach to continue to teach him, because he's not a finished product yet. You're drafting the raw skills and talent and then hoping to continue to develop them.
100%. I think with Kelvin Banks, Keith, I'm not going to lie. Like, after I watched him, I feel like he's probably better suited playing guard. And that's a spot that
I feel the same way. And I was closer to a second round grade.
As a tackle?
When watching him, as a tackle. And felt like he could be athletic guard. He reminded me of something. This guy's playing good football for the Packers, Zach Tom. I got those type of vibes from him, and he's playing solid football. It's just that, are you getting elite? You know what I'm saying? High end, when you're talking about being drafted as a top 5, top 10 pick, which he wasn't in this draft, but we haven't had that conversation. And I just wanted to see, how you felt about that also.
And I mean, I agree with you. I think because one thing I noticed when watching Kelvin Banks, he does a lot of jump sets. And I'm like, you can't get away with that in the NFL, just jumping out there instead of, like, I don't see a lot of diagonal or vertical, just kick steps and everything. It's just he quick jumps a lot. And I'm like, in the NFL, like, you got guys who are very nuanced with their hands. And if you jump out there, like, away from your guard, you gave them a two-way go, essentially. Now they're going to work inside, and they're right to the quarterback. I think putting him in like that left guard spot. Remember, especially with Seattle, they lost, I think was it Damian Lewis? Like, they lost one of their guards to Carolina. Like losing that was a big hit, because we watching it, even though as good as Geno Smith was, that interior offensive line got him lit up a good bit this year. So having Charles Cross, I think Abraham Lucas will be healthy this year. He was hurt a decent part of 2024. Getting those two bookend young tackles back, they're going to figure out which one they're going to pay. It's going to be Charles Cross. But putting a Kelvin Banks at left guard beside Cross gives you a strong pass blocking left side of your offensive line. And I just think that's going to help. That's going to help Geno, but also that stretch run game, that's going to help that as well. So I agree with you. I don't think he's a true tackle right now. He's got too many technical flaws in his game in terms of Kelvin Banks. Shamar Stewart, this is definitely an upside pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is a Todd Bowles upside pick, getting that kid that, like you said, 6'6", 290, 280, ridiculous mover and athlete at that size. Now you got to work on that pass rush plan and technique. I think it was a day one of practice at the Senior Bowl. Like most of the guys, Shamar was trying to power through everybody. Then we saw him on day 2, which I think that was the last day he practiced. You saw the speed and the quickness outside, the quick win, I think, against like Cam Williams from Texas to get to get the strip sack. I think it might have been Jackson Dart or somebody in the whatever quarterback was in the pocket, whoever was in the pocket at that time. Watching him do that, I'm like, okay, so you know how, like, you can win quick. Like, I can see that, how when you put your mind to it, you can do it, but it's just not enough reps of seeing him do it enough to where I think Dan Brugler has him as like a top 10 prospect on this top 100 big board. That's a little high for me. And Keith, you're not on the hill by yourself with Shamar Stewart. There's a whole group of people on Twitter that do not like. And most of them are Panther fans. They're like, we do not need to take another toolsy raw edge rusher. So they are adamant about not taking Shamar Stewart. But there is a lot of people that have questions about what to do with them. And like you said, you got to have the right D-line coach, right? You got to have the right D-line coach to get him where the physical tools so he can go.
Yep, I agree with DP. Let's keep this thing and wrap it up with what man picks 21 through 32. Yes, the playoff teams, the contending Super Bowl champions, Philadelphia Eagles. Who do they go with? It's maybe a surprise. It may not be a surprise. Let's talk about that coming up next.
Football season may be over, but basketball is in full swing, and there's no better way to stay in the game than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With PrizePicks, you simply pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. This week, I'm looking at Jason Tatum for more than 25 points. The best part, PrizePicks is quick and easy. You can set up your lineup in less than 60 seconds, and they're fast and secure withdrawals, meaning I get my winnings in as little as 15 minutes. Plus, you're going to love the weekly promos like Taco Tuesday, where you get discounted player projections for an even better value. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Let's close out my latest 2025 NFL Mock Draft at pick 21. The Pittsburgh Steelers select wide receiver Luther Burton III out of Missouri. At pick 22, the Los Angeles Chargers select Ashton Jeanty, running back out of Boise State. At pick 23, the Green Bay Packers select Elik Iomander, wide receiver out of Stanford. At pick 24, the Minnesota Vikings select Benjamin Morrison, cornerback out of Notre Dame. At pick 25, the Houston Texans select offensive lineman Donovan Jackson from Ohio State. At pick 26, the Los Angeles Rams select Armand Membo, tackle from Missouri. At pick 27, the Baltimore Ravens select Princely Uman-Milan, edge rusher out of Ole Miss. At pick 28, the Detroit Lions select Jack Sawyer, edge rusher from Ohio State. At pick 29, the Washington Commanders select wide receiver from Ole Miss, Trey Harris. At pick 30, the Buffalo Bills select Malachi Starks, safety out of Georgia. At pick 31, the Kansas City Chiefs select Josh Simmons, tackle out of Ohio State. And at pick 32, none other than the Super Bowl champion, the Philadelphia Eagles, select Georgia edge rusher, defensive lineman, Michael Williams. Keith, where we starting here?
Let's go pick 23. Green Bay Packers selecting Elik Iomander. Biggest concern with this pick, DP. I look at the Packers wide receiver room, and I don't know if they have a complete guy. I think they have guys that are very good at specific things, but every guy they almost have to trigger in certain situations, right? Like if you want the deep shot, you got to call that wide receiver's number. If you want the short to intermediate, you got to call that wide receiver's number. If you want, it's just different things you have to, it's always a specific play design for a specific, or feel like it has to be very specific to that wide receiver skill set, because these guys are different, which is, could be a good thing, but I think it also hurts them in crunch time moments when they just need a guy that we know we going to every single play because he's just going to dominate. Now, putting Elik Iomander in there, I think that is somewhat, I guess you could say, kind of redundant, just from the guy that I think about is, why am I blanking on his name, from Virginia? Dontavian Wicks, right? And I think that they big, powerful possession wide receivers. And the only thing that I had concerns with Elik is watching him in press man situations. I don't know if he's a vertical separator. And that's the part that just kind of concerned me a little bit watching him. Was like, I really wish could have seen a whole lot more of him. But that was the part that concerned me. That I was like, throwing him into this wide receiver group, I think he's going to be another guy that's used in a specific way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. I think for me with Elick, I wish I saw him at the Senior Bowl so we could have gauged that athleticism,
the speed
and everything. I think with him, it's very similar. I think the difference between him and Wicks is that's like he's a stronger, more physical version of Wicks, where he still runs great routes, good release package, but the ball skills, you know what I mean, being able to go up above defenders, make those contested catches when need be. And I think for them losing now, again, the Packers typically don't take wide receiver in the first round. So I'm expecting somebody to be like, they're not going to do it. But they lost Christian Watson to another leg injury. I think it's a torn ACL. You know what I mean? Yep. So like they're probably going to move on from him. You got Romeo Doubs. You have Jaden Reed. It seems like Dontavian Wicks is like wide receiver 4 or 5 on this depth chart and everything. I think putting Elick in this situation, you have a guy that you can. We always talk about. I think you always say like, do you have a receiver on 3rd and 5? You isolate, he runs the slants, and he wins it. Yep. Elick can do that exact same thing, and I think pairing him with the gadgety, I don't want to say it like that, but the gadgety skill set of Jaden Reed, because he does so many different things and gets the ball in different places in different ways, and then the speed of the Romeo Doubs, and then still having Dontavian Wicks. I think that helps out Jordan Love a lot, because this is a guy that I think in those situations where it's like, I got my one-on-one, I'm going to throw that back shoulder fade, Elick can make it. Throw the 50-50 ball, Elick can make it. His vertical playmaking ability is going to be more predicated on, I'm not calling him this guy, but similar to Devontae Adams, winning at the line of scrimmage, winning with suddenness, detail, footwork, winning against press alignment early, getting vertical, stacking the guy, and you getting the ball out. I think that's where he's going to be able to live. Keith, I'm going to tell you one of my favorite picks, and some people might think I'm crazy because I haven't seen his name despite how great he played this season. Donovan Jackson to the Houston Texans. Like, nobody has talked about him as a potential first-round pick as much, but going from guard, who's like, I think coming out of the summer, had a first-round grade on him as a guard, and to lose Josh Simmons and to watch him outside of that, the first game, he was baptized by fire with Abdul Carter. After that, I'm pretty sure he pitched a shutout. I don't think he gave up a sack after the Abdul Carter game, and that was like week 7. So he pitched a shutout. He was really good for them in the run game and as a pass blocker, and he actually showed something I didn't know that he had, and that was more foot quickness on the perimeter to kick step and get vertical. Watching Kelvin Banks, like, I was like, okay, I see Kelvin jump set a lot. I don't see him get depth in his pass drop. I see Donovan Jackson, who's actually a guard, get depth. They have Laramie Tunsil. They may not even need him to play tackle. So you put him back at his natural position at guard. You could upgrade a physicality from Titus Howard. Maybe you flip Titus Howard to the right guard spot, and let go of Shaq Mason, who didn't play his best ball. He's getting a little bit older anyway. They did change their line coaches, so we'll see if that helped them. But I think Donovan Jackson to help that interior offensive line would be big time for CJ Stroud and that offensive line in Houston.
Yeah, DP. No, I like that one, and you're right as far as him not being talked about. But I think he's going to end up being a top 15 guy, because I told you we're going to hear the Peter Skoronski, Graham Barton conversation all over again. Guy that could potentially play all 5 positions for offensive line. Those guys are so valuable. The stretch that I like, the Baltimore Ravens getting Princely Uman-Milan, the Detroit Lions getting Jack Sawyer, and then the Commanders going with Trey Harris, getting Jay Daniels, another wide receiver. I like that, but I can't end this podcast off, DP, without going with the layup of all layups. And what I'm saying is, in a mock draft, right, you're trying to be predictive. And you had Michael Williams, a Georgia football player, go to the Philadelphia Eagles, right? That's what I call a layup. That's what I call paying attention to the trends. That's what I call not overthinking this process, right? The Philadelphia Eagles with a Georgia football player are going to figure it out. And I can definitely see, if I had to bet some money, DP, I'm betting a couple dollars on Michael Williams.
It made too much sense to me, Keith. It made too much sense to me to be like, all right, because you kind of almost forget until you listen to Jalen Carter's post game interview on the field. He was like, and you realize how many Georgia players they actually have. Him, Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, N'Kobe Dean, Keely Ringo. I might be missing another 2 or 3. Like, they have so many Georgia players. And to watch the development from Nolan Smith and how he's played and how pivotal he played down the stretch, I'm like, yeah, if anybody's going to take the flyer on Michael, like, because I think Michael could drop because there's going to be other edge rushers that you're like, you know what? I'm good. I know what he can do, and I feel more comfortable with the floor. I think on Michael, also losing Milton Williams, could they then kick Michael beside Jalen Carter? I'm sorry. And maybe because I think Michael's like 270, maybe you bump him up to 285 and he plays that interior defensive line spot right beside, especially on third downs. They're going to also lose Josh Sweat. So Milton Williams and Josh Sweat going to get paid. They're going to leave. So now you could play him as a base defensive end opposite of Nolan Smith on rundowns with Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter on the interior, which would give them a full Georgia defensive. That's crazy. But then you kick on third downs, you bring in one of your other pass rushers and you kick Michael down beside Jalen Carter and let those guys get upfield. I just think it makes way too much sense. Also, Keith, what makes way too much sense at pick 22, the Chargers, if both tight ends are off the board, could you go Elijah Arroyo here? Sure. But getting Ashton Jeanty, we saw J.K. Dobbins had a career resurgence, but then he ended up getting hurt again. Gus Edwards is not what he was in Baltimore. One thing about that coaching staff, they want to run the ball. And if Ashton Jeanty falls to 22, which I think is a real possibility. I don't think it's a surefire thing he goes top 15. He falls to 22, I could absolutely see them running that card up, getting a top-tier running back and runner who also can catch the ball out of the backfield to build that running game around with Greg Roman and giving that play action threat to Justin Herbert. I think that, they need wide receiver help, but they also need to improve that run game.
Yep. No, I agree 100% with DP. That wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Guys, on tomorrow's show, we're going to get into some of the best day 2 value prospects for the 2025 NFL Draft. Those guys that can help your team that you don't have to spend the first round pick on. We're going to talk about that and more on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.